A new beginning in the midst of chaos. The late afternoon sun cast a warm golden glow across the sprawling city park as Liam ambled along the familiar path that cut through it. Leaves crunched underfoot, swirling in eddies with the light autumn breeze, and Liam let his gaze drift across the quiet landscape. A fourth grader with an unusually thoughtful mind, he preferred the solitude of his walk home from school, especially on days like this, when everything felt calm and still. The empty playground stood silent, its swing swaying slightly in the wind, and the wide-open grass field stretched out like a quiet, welcoming space, free from the busy energy of his school. Liam's mother, a nurse at the local hospital, often worked double shifts to make sure they had everything they needed. She was a constant figure of strength in his life, always there with a reassuring word or a warm hug, even when she came home exhausted. Sometimes she came home too late for them to have dinner together, which made Liam feel lonely. He often wished he could help ease her burdens, especially on days when he saw how tired she was, her nurse's uniform wrinkled and her face drawn. He knew she worked hard for him, sacrificing a lot to make sure he had a better future, and he dreamed of the day he could help her in return. Passing the old oak tree, he glanced up, catching sight of a single red leaf spiraling down. As he watched it drift lazily to the ground, his thoughts returned to his classroom from earlier that day. His teacher, Mrs. Winston, had posed a question that left him reflecting. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" While his classmates had eagerly raised their hands to shout out dreams of becoming astronauts, pop stars, or basketball players, Liam had stayed quiet, unsure how to put his answer into words. His dreams weren't as clear-cut. He didn't yearn for fame or fortune. Instead, he wanted something simpler yet profound, to make life easier for his mother, and maybe, just maybe, to help people the way she did. Lost in these musings, he nearly missed it, a faint sound piercing the quiet. He stopped in his tracks, tuning into the noise, which sounded unmistakably like a baby's cry. It was soft at first, barely audible above the rustle of the leaves, but it grew louder and more distressed as Liam walked toward the playground. He quickened his steps, heart pounding, scanning the empty area for any sign of a child. Then he saw it, a stroller half hidden behind a bush near the swing set, with a small baby inside, wailing and waving its tiny fists. Liam's eyes widened. The baby couldn't have been more than a few months old, with chubby cheeks flushed red from crying and wisps of blonde hair peeking out from under a flimsy worn blanket. He looked around, calling out, "Hello, is anyone here?" But no one answered. The park was as empty as he'd ever seen it, and it struck him as strange, almost eerie. The baby's cries grew louder, each whimper tugging at his heart. He moved closer, his chest tightening with worry. Without hesitating, he reached into the stroller, gently placing a hand on the baby's tiny, waving fists. "It's okay," he murmured, trying to sound calm and soothing as he'd seen his mother do with children at the hospital. "Don't cry. I'm here." The baby's cries softened, the desperate wails turning into soft whimpers, and for a moment, those small eyes looked up at him with a trust that made his heart swell. He knew he couldn't leave the baby alone. The hospital wasn't far, just a few blocks away, and it was the first place that came to mind. His mother worked there, and even if she wasn't on shift, someone could help. Taking a deep breath, he glanced around one last time, hoping to see someone coming to claim the baby. But the park remained empty, with only the distant hum of traffic in the background. With newfound determination, Liam took hold of the stroller's handles and began pushing it toward the hospital. The baby let out a soft coo, as if it understood that help was on the way. Each step felt heavy with responsibility, yet he was determined to get this child to safety. Journey through judgment. Liam focused on keeping his steps steady as he pushed the stroller down the sidewalk, trying to shield the baby from the cool breeze that had picked up. He cast a quick glance at the infant, whose small face was finally calm, eyes wide as they took in the world around them. The hospital wasn't far, But with each block they covered, Liam began to feel the weight of people's stares. As he maneuvered the stroller through the busy streets, passing cars slowed down, and pedestrians paused mid-step, their faces marked with expressions that ranged from curiosity to suspicion. People craned their necks for a better look. A young black boy, walking with a crying white baby in an old stroller. Their glances made his cheeks burn, but he kept his head down, focusing on the road ahead and murmuring soft reassurances to the baby whenever they whimpered. He wanted to look away from the judging eyes, but he couldn't help noticing the whispers and sideways glances from strangers. At a stoplight, Liam waited for the pedestrian signal, gently rocking the stroller to soothe the baby. Beside him, a woman wearing sunglasses and a large sun hat stared openly, her lips pursed in disapproval. She held her purse a little closer, her gaze darting from Liam to the baby, as if trying to piece together a mystery. Another man with a briefcase stopped beside her, giving Liam a lingering look before shaking his head and walking away. The longer the light stayed red, the more uncomfortable Liam felt, as if a spotlight were shining directly on him. He tried to focus on the baby, hoping his whispered lullabies would distract him from the discomfort building in his chest. When the light finally changed, he pushed the stroller forward, his pace quickening with each step. He tried to remind himself of his mother's words, "Do what's right, no matter how others see it." But it was hard to ignore the sting of their glances, the feeling that he was being judged before anyone even knew the story. Halfway to the hospital, an SUV pulled up beside them, matching Liam's pace for a few seconds. The driver, a woman in her late 40s with a frown etched deeply into her face, lowered her window and leaned out. "Hey boy," she called, her voice sharp. Liam's shoulders tensed as he turned to face her. "What are you doing with that baby?" Her gaze was hard, suspicious, as if she already had her mind made up about him. "I'm just trying to get them to the hospital," Liam replied, his voice small but firm. They were left alone in the park. The woman's eyes narrowed, flicking from the baby to Liam, as though looking for some hidden deceit. "Is that so?" she said, not bothering to hide her skepticism. "Maybe I should call the police, just to be safe." Liam's heart leaped into his throat. The thought of the police arriving, of having to explain himself under their stern, watchful eyes, made his stomach churn. But he steadied himself, knowing he couldn't let fear deter him. "You can call them, if you want, Mon," he said, holding her gaze with as much courage as he could muster. "I'm doing what's right." The woman pursed her lips, hesitating for a moment, before sighing and muttering, "Kids these days." She shook her head and drove off, leaving Liam standing there, his legs trembling slightly from the encounter. He took a deep breath, calming himself before he continued down the sidewalk, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he finally reached the crosswalk in front of the hospital, a police car drove past, and for a moment, Liam's heart raced as he imagined the officers inside looking at him the same way everyone else had. But the car continued on, not sparing him a second glance. He exhaled in relief, focusing on the last stretch to the hospital entrance. As he stepped through the automatic doors, a rush of cool, sterile air washed over him, mingling with the faint scent of antiseptic and the quiet hum of hospital machinery. The baby had fallen asleep on the way, their soft breaths barely audible over the din of the lobby. Liam felt a wave of relief, but his tension returned as he noticed the sudden silence that fell over the bustling area. Heads turned, and conversations stopped as doctors, nurses, and visitors paused to take in the sight of him, a young boy with a baby in a stroller, standing alone in the middle of the hospital lobby. An elderly man lowered his newspaper, his gaze fixed on Liam, while the woman clutching her purse took a cautious step back. Even the receptionist behind the desk stood up, her eyes wide as she watched him approach. Liam swallowed hard, feeling his throat go dry as he pushed the stroller forward, his sneakers squeaking slightly against the polished floor. Before he could reach the reception desk, two nurses in blue scrubs rushed over, their faces lined with concern. One of them, a woman with short brown hair and kind eyes, crouched down to Liam's level, looking between him and the sleeping baby. "What's going on here, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice gentle but edged with suspicion. Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady his trembling hands. "I found this baby alone in the park," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "There was no one else around, so I brought them here." The second nurse, a tall man with a stern expression, exchanged a glance with his colleague. "Are you sure?" he asked, his tone carrying a hint of doubt. "You didn't see anyone nearby? No parents, no babysitter?" Liam shook his head, feeling the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on him. "I promise, I looked everywhere. I couldn't just leave them there. They needed help." The woman softened slightly, her gaze shifting to the baby as she reached out to gently touch the infant's cheek. But the man's expression remained guarded, as if he couldn't quite believe Liam's story. Just then, a woman in a white coat approached, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her gaze sharp and discerning. Her name tag read Dr. Margaret Brooks, and as she drew closer, her eyes landed on the baby, her expression transforming from professional curiosity to something far more profound. Her face went pale, her hands trembling slightly as she stepped forward. "Emma," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hand flew to her mouth as her eyes filled with tears. She knelt beside the stroller, her fingers gently brushing the baby's face, her body racked with quiet sobs. "Emma, my sweet Emma." Liam watched, stunned, as the usually composed doctor broke down in front of him, her shoulders shaking as she cradled the baby in her arms. The nurses, who had been watching Liam with suspicion, now exchanged looks of surprise and shame, realizing the depth of the connection between the doctor and the child. Dr. Brooks looked up at Liam, her eyes red-rimmed but filled with gratitude. How did you find her?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Liam swallowed, feeling a strange mix of pride and humility. "I was walking home, and I heard her crying," he explained softly. "I couldn't just leave her there. I thought maybe a hospital could help." The nurses who had initially doubted him now looked at him, with expressions of awe and remorse, their earlier suspicions melting away. Dr. Brooks reached out, taking Liam's hand in hers, and squeezing it tightly, her tears spilling over as she looked at the boy who had saved her granddaughter. "You saved her," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. "You brought her back to me. I can't thank you enough." Liam shifted uncomfortably, unused to the overwhelming attention. He glanced down at his sneakers, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "I'm just glad she's safe," he mumbled, feeling his cheeks heat up. But before he could process the moment fully, a new figure entered the scene. The double doors of the lobby swung open, and two police officers walked in, their faces set with a stern professionalism. The taller officer, a man with graying hair and a no-nonsense expression, scanned the room before his gaze landed on Liam and the baby. He approached slowly, his partner following close behind. "Are you the boy who found the baby?" he asked, his tone neutral but his eyes filled with an unspoken question. Liam nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of his actions anew. The officer took out a small notebook, jotting down details as he asked Liam to recount what had happened. Each question felt more pointed than the last, as if he were searching for some inconsistency, some reason to doubt Liam's story. "Are you sure there was no one else around?" the officer asked, his pen poised over the paper. "No one you might have missed?" Liam's voice wavered slightly as he replied, "No, sir. I looked all around. She was all alone." The officer exchanged a look with his partner, and Liam could feel their doubt creeping back, that same suspicion that had followed him all the way to the hospital. Dr. Brooks, still holding the baby, looked up sharply, her voice filled with a quiet fury. "This boy just saved my granddaughter's life," she said firmly, her gaze fixed on the officers. "He did more than most adults would have done. I suggest you treat him with the respect he deserves." The officers shifted uncomfortably, their previous intensity softening as they looked back at Liam. The first officer cleared his throat, nodding slowly. "Of course, Mom," he said, his tone more respectful. "We just have to be thorough." "Thank you, son, for what you did." Liam managed a small nod, feeling a wave of relief wash over him as the tension finally began to dissipate. He glanced at Dr. Brooks, who gave him a warm, reassuring smile, her eyes still glistening with tears. As he watched her cradle Emma, he felt a sense of peace settle over him, a feeling that he had done something good, something meaningful. And for the first time that day, he felt like a hero, not in the way that his classmates dreamed of, but in a way that was quiet, selfless, and full of heart, shadows of prejudice. The next few hours unfolded in a blur for Liam, as hospital staff bustled around, ensuring Emma was safe and healthy while trying to process the day's events. Dr. Brooks, her emotions raw and her relief palpable, insisted on keeping Liam close by. She wasn't ready to let go of the boy who had returned her granddaughter to her, and Liam stayed, feeling more out of place with each passing minute, but anchored by Dr. Brooks' unrelenting gratitude. As they sat together in the waiting area, Liam finally had a moment to relax. Dr. Brooks watched over him like a guardian, offering him snacks and a bottle of water, fussing over him with the same care she had for Emma. Despite the awkwardness, Liam appreciated her warmth, something he'd felt only from his own mother. He was about to thank her when a pair of familiar figures walked through the lobby doors, his mother and the police officer from earlier. Her eyes immediately found him, and she rushed over, wrapping him in a hug that was both fierce and tender, her relief evident. "Liam," she murmured, her hands cupping his face, her own eyes filling with tears. "I was so worried." The police officer cleared his throat, catching her attention. "Ma'am, we've documented Liam's statement, but we'll need to follow up to ensure everything's in order." The officer's tone was stiff, his gaze flicking back and forth between Liam and his mother. His mother nodded, her face calm but her eyes wary. "Of course," she said, her voice laced with quiet strength. "He's done nothing wrong, so we'll cooperate fully." Dr. Brooks, still holding Emma protectively, stepped forward, her gaze steady and unwavering as she addressed the officers. "This young man acted with bravery and compassion," she said firmly, her voice carrying through the lobby. "I am grateful beyond words for what he's done for my family." The officers exchanged glances, clearly moved by Dr. Brooks' conviction. The elder officer spoke again, his tone softening. "We're only following protocol, Doctor. But it's clear this young man did something remarkable today." With a polite nod, the officers turned and left, leaving Liam, his mother, and Dr. Brooks alone in a suddenly quiet lobby. Dr. Brooks turned to Liam's mother, her expression shifting to one of deep respect. "Thank you for raising such a wonderful young man," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Emma is safe because of him." Liam's mother gave her a small, grateful smile, squeezing Liam's hand. "I'm proud of him. He's always been kind, always thinking of others." But she hesitated, glancing down at Liam, her face tinged with worry. Dr. Brooks noticed her hesitation and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Please, if there's anything I can do, I want to help. Liam has given me my family back. I can never repay him fully, but I'd like to try." After a pause, Liam's mother nodded slowly, her face softening. "Thank you, Dr. Brooks. It's just, the world doesn't always make it easy for people like us." Dr. Brooks' eyes grew somber as she listened, understanding dawning in her expression. "I understand. My son, James, he might benefit from meeting Liam. He's a good man, but I think he's forgotten some important things. Maybe seeing Liam's kindness could help him remember." Liam's mother hesitated, glancing at her son. "We've been through a lot, Dr. Brooks. I don't want Liam to feel unwelcome. We're used to people making assumptions about us." A silence fell over them, each of them weighed down by unspoken fears and worries. Dr. Brooks gave her a sad smile, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Then perhaps it's time for my family to confront their assumptions. If you're willing, I'd love to invite you both to dinner. We should be celebrating what Liam has done." Liam glanced at his mother, sensing her hesitation, but he saw the small nod she gave him, a quiet acceptance that had an edge of hope. She'd always taught him to have faith in people, even if that faith was tested. "All right," his mother finally said, her tone soft but firm. "We'd be honored to join you." The night of the dinner came quickly, and Liam found himself in the unfamiliar world of Dr. Brooks' large, well-kept house. Their small apartment was cozy but modest, filled with thrifted furniture and old books his mother had collected over the years. Dr. Brooks' home, on the other hand, felt vast, with tall ceilings, gleaming wood floors, and an atmosphere of silent grandeur. The smell of rich food wafted from the kitchen as Dr. Brooks led them to the dining room, her expression warm as she encouraged them to make themselves comfortable. Liam and his mother sat quietly, taking in the surroundings, their backs stiff with a mix of awe and uncertainty. Just as they were settling in, Dr. Brooks' son, James, entered the room, his posture as formal and unyielding as the polished decor around him. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Liam, a flicker of skepticism passing across his face, before he quickly masked it. "Thank you for coming," he said, his tone polite but distant. "We've heard a lot about you both. My mother has been very grateful." Liam shifted in his chair, feeling the weight of James' scrutiny. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a reassuring nod before turning her attention to James. "Your mother is very kind," she replied, her tone measured but sincere. "We're grateful for her invitation." Dinner was served, and the table filled with plates of perfectly arranged food, sparkling crystal glasses, and a centerpiece of fresh flowers. As they began to eat, Dr. Brooks tried to engage everyone in conversation, but James' skepticism created an undercurrent of tension that was hard to ignore. Every time Liam spoke, James watched him with a guarded expression, his questions laced with subtle implications that made Liam feel like he was being interrogated. "So, Liam," James said, his voice carefully neutral, "how did you know the hospital was the right place to bring Emma?" Liam took a deep breath, feeling his mother's gaze on him as he answered, I thought it was the safest place. My mom works there, and I knew the doctors could help." James nodded slowly, his gaze still sharp. "And you didn't see anyone else in the park?" "Not a single person." Liam felt his cheeks grow warm, but he met James' gaze with as much confidence as he could muster. "No, sir. I looked around, but no one was there." Dr. Brooks cleared her throat, sensing the tension building. "James," she said, her tone gentle but firm, "Liam did something incredibly brave. Perhaps we could focus on celebrating that." James didn't respond, but his expression softened slightly as he glanced at Liam, a hint of doubt finally fading from his eyes. Liam felt a surge of relief, but knew that James' approval was fragile, ready to disappear with the slightest misstep. As the meal continued, James slowly began to warm up, asking Liam about his school, his interests, and his life with a genuine curiosity that hadn't been there before. Liam answered as best as he could, feeling his confidence grow with each passing question. He spoke about his love for reading, his dreams of helping people one day, and the close bond he shared with his mother. By the time dessert was served, James' skepticism had faded entirely, replaced by a quiet respect. He listened intently as Liam spoke, nodding thoughtfully, and even offering a small smile when Liam shared a funny story about his school science project that had gone wrong. Liam's mother watched the change with a soft, hopeful expression, her hand resting on his shoulder, as if to reassure him that they were finally being seen for who they truly were. After dessert, as they lingered in the dining room, James cleared his throat, a hesitant look on his face. "Liam, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice thick with sincerity. "I misjudged you. What you did for my family. It was more than most people would have done. I see that now." Liam felt a warmth spread through his chest, a sense of validation that made his earlier discomfort worth it. "Thank you, sir," he replied, his voice quiet but steady. "I just wanted to help." James nodded, a glimmer of gratitude in his eyes. "And you did, Liam. More than you know." Dr. Brooks, watching the exchange with a tearful smile, placed a hand over her heart. "This has been more than I could have hoped for," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Liam, you've reminded us all of what truly matters. Compassion, courage. These are the things that define us." As they gathered their things to leave, Dr. Brooks hugged Liam tightly, her embrace filled with a warmth that made him feel like he truly belonged. "You're always welcome here, Liam," she whispered. "You and your mother. Your family now." Liam smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders as he returned the hug. As they walked out of the house, hand in hand, he glanced back, seeing Dr. Brooks and James watching them with expressions of respect and admiration. He knew that this was just the beginning of a new journey, one that would bring healing, understanding, and perhaps a lasting connection between two families who had once been strangers. Walking back home, his mother squeezed his hand, a proud smile lighting up her face. "You did well, Liam," she said softly. "You showed them who you are." Liam nodded, his heart full. I think they finally saw us." The night air was cool as they made their way down the quiet street, but for the first time, Liam felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature, a warmth that came from the simple, powerful feeling of being understood. Building bridges. The following weeks passed in a rhythm that was both familiar and new. Dr. Brooks, true to her word, kept Liam and his mother close, inviting them over frequently for dinners, family gatherings, and occasional weekend outings. Each visit brought a sense of belonging that was different from anything Liam had ever known. He and his mother had always been somewhat isolated, their world limited to their small apartment, his school, and his mother's demanding shifts at the hospital. Now, their world felt broader, filled with new connections, shared laughter, and the warmth of friendship. One Saturday morning, Dr. Brooks invited them to her house for a small family gathering. She explained it was an informal brunch, a time for everyone to relax, catch up, and enjoy each other's company. Liam felt a flutter of excitement as he and his mother walked up the path to Dr. Brooks' home, a bouquet of fresh flowers in his mother's hands. They were greeted warmly by Dr. Brooks, who hugged them both and ushered them inside. The house smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries, filling the air with a comforting scent that made Liam feel instantly at ease. As they moved into the living room, he noticed James sitting by the fireplace, his young daughter Emma toddling around with a toy clutched in her small hands. James looked up as they entered, offering them a tentative smile. It was clear that, while he still had reservations, he was making an effort. "Good to see you again, Liam," James said, his tone much softer than it had been at their first dinner. Liam returned the smile, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement as he greeted James. Emma's face lit up when she saw Liam, and she dropped her toy, stumbling over to him with outstretched arms. Liam crouched down, laughing as she reached for him, her small hands grabbing his shirt as she babbled excitedly. Dr. Brooks watched the scene with a warm smile, her eyes misting over as she observed the bond forming between her granddaughter and the boy who had saved her. As everyone gathered around the dining table for brunch, Liam found himself seated between Dr. Brooks and Emma, who insisted on holding his hand throughout most of the meal. Conversations flowed easily, laughter punctuating stories about work, childhood memories, and family anecdotes. Liam's mother shared a few stories of her own, recalling the moments when Liam had shown his strong character even as a young child. Dr. Brooks listened intently, her admiration for Liam's mother evident. "You've raised an extraordinary young man," she said, her voice filled with respect. "It's clear that his compassion and bravery come from you." Liam's mother smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I just tried to teach him to be kind, to help others whenever he could," she replied. "I wanted him to know that we're all part of something bigger, that what we do matters." James nodded thoughtfully, his gaze resting on Liam. "It's rare to see that kind of maturity in someone so young," he remarked. "You've inspired us, Liam. You've reminded us all of the importance of kindness." Liam felt his cheeks warm, unused to such praise. He glanced down at his plate, a small smile playing at his lips as he mumbled, "I just did what felt right." Emma giggled, reaching for his hand again, and Liam held her small fingers gently, feeling a wave of gratitude for the little girl who had unknowingly brought their families together. As he looked around the table, he felt a growing sense of acceptance, a sense that he was truly part of something special. After brunch, Dr. Brooks suggested they all go out to the backyard, where a small play area was set up for Emma. The garden was beautifully maintained, filled with vibrant flowers, neatly trimmed hedges, and a small swing set nestled in the corner. Liam and Emma's laughter filled the air as they chased each other around, Emma's giggles infectious as she toddled along with unsteady steps. James watched them from a distance, his expression thoughtful. Dr. Brooks noticed his silence and approached him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly. James sighed, his gaze fixed on Liam and Emma as they played. "I was wrong, Mom," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I judged Liam and his mother without really knowing them. I assumed things about them, things that had no basis in truth." Dr. Brooks gave his arm a comforting squeeze. "Sometimes we're all guilty of that, James," she said gently. "But what matters is that you've opened your heart to change. Liam and his mother, they're good people. They've faced a lot of hardship with grace and dignity. They deserve kindness, just like anyone else." James nodded slowly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I see that now. I see how much strength and kindness it takes to endure what they've been through." He looked at his mother, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "And I see why you care so much about them." Dr. Brooks smiled, her gaze softening as she watched Liam lift Emma onto the small swing, pushing her gently as she laughed. "They've given me a gift I could never repay," she said quietly. "Liam brought Emma back to us. But more than that, they've shown us all the power of compassion." James nodded, his heart full of a newfound respect for Liam and his mother. He walked over to where Liam was pushing Emma on the swing, watching the boy's careful, gentle movements. After a moment, he took a deep breath, his voice soft but sincere. "Liam," he began, "I want you to know, I'm truly grateful for what you did for my family. You saved Emma, but you've also taught us all something important. I was wrong to judge you. I'm sorry." Liam looked up, his eyes widening in surprise at the apology. For a moment, he was speechless, but then he nodded, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Thank you, sir," he replied. "That means a lot." James reached out, patting Liam on the shoulder. "You've got a good heart, Liam," he said, his tone filled with a respect that hadn't been there before. "And I hope we can learn from each other." Liam nodded, feeling a surge of pride and relief. He had never expected such a heartfelt apology from James, and it filled him with a quiet confidence that he hadn't felt before. As he looked around the backyard, he realized that he truly belonged here, that he and his mother had found a place where they were valued and accepted. Over the next few weeks, the two families became inseparable, their lives intertwined in ways that felt natural and comforting. They shared meals, celebrated birthdays, and spent weekends exploring the city together. Liam and his mother found themselves welcomed not just by Dr. Brooks and her family, but by the entire neighborhood. One afternoon, Mrs. Johnson, the elderly woman who lived next door, stopped by with a freshly baked pie. She offered it to Liam's mother with a shy smile, explaining that she had wanted to welcome them to the neighborhood properly. "Your boy. He's quite something," she said, her gaze softening as she looked at Liam. "We don't often see young people with such a strong sense of kindness. It's inspiring." Liam's mother accepted the pie with a grateful smile, her heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. We're grateful to be part of this community. Word of Liam's actions had spread throughout the neighborhood, and soon, other neighbors began stopping by to offer small gestures of kindness, a loaf of bread, a potted plant, a card with heartfelt words of appreciation. Each gesture filled Liam and his mother with a warmth that went beyond words, a sense of belonging that they had longed for but never dared to expect. As they walked through the neighborhood one evening, hand in hand, Liam and his mother marveled at how much their lives had changed. They had found a community that accepted them, people who saw them for who they were, not for their circumstances or background. It was a new beginning, one filled with hope and promise. One day, Dr. Brooks invited Liam and his mother over for a small celebration. She had organized a gathering in her backyard, inviting the neighbors and friends who had become part of their lives. The yard was filled with twinkling lights, colorful decorations, and tables laden with food. As the guests mingled, Dr. Brooks gathered everyone together, her voice ringing out over the quiet murmurs of conversation. "Tonight, we're here to celebrate something special," she began, her gaze resting on Liam and his mother. "Liam has shown us all what it means to be brave and kind. He saved my granddaughter, but he's done so much more than that. He's reminded us of the power of compassion." Liam felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment and pride as the guests applauded, their faces filled with admiration and gratitude. His mother squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with pride as she looked at him. Dr. Brooks stepped forward, holding a small box in her hands. She handed it to Liam, her expression filled with warmth. "This is just a small token of our gratitude," she said, her voice soft. "You've touched our lives, Liam. We're better for knowing you." Liam opened the box, finding a silver medallion inside, engraved with the words courage and compassion. He felt a lump form in his throat as he held the medallion, realizing the depth of the bond he had forged with Dr. Brooks and her family. As the evening continued, Liam and his mother moved through the crowd, sharing stories, laughter, and memories with the people who would become their new family. The air was filled with joy, the sounds of clinking glasses and heartfelt toasts echoing into the night. And as Liam looked around, he felt a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that he was exactly where he was meant to be. In that moment, he knew that he and his mother had not only found a new home, but a family that would stand by them, a community that would celebrate their courage and kindness. It was a night filled with love, acceptance, and the promise of a future built on the bridges they had forged together. Facing the past, forging the future. As Liam and his mother became more deeply woven into Dr. Brooks' family and community, they also felt the weight of their past loosening its grip, gradually being replaced by a newfound sense of stability and belonging. Each day spent with Dr. Brooks, James, and little Emma brought them closer to this new life. But Liam's mother knew that for the sense of peace to truly take root, they had to confront a part of their past that they had left unspoken for so long. One quiet Sunday afternoon, as the autumn sun cast long shadows across the backyard, Dr. Brooks invited Liam and his mother over for tea. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of amber and red, filling the yard with a warm, serene beauty. They sat around the patio table, sipping tea and sharing stories, when Dr. Brooks leaned over, her voice soft with curiosity. "You've been so generous with sharing your lives with us," she said gently, looking at Liam's mother. "But I can sense there's more to your story. If you're comfortable, I'd love to hear about it." Liam's mother hesitated, glancing at her son, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she set her tea down, her gaze distant, as she began to speak. "My parents moved here from a small town with big dreams, but life had other plans," she began, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "I grew up watching them work tirelessly, doing everything they could to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but they taught me the value of resilience and integrity. When Liam's father and I were together, we shared those values, or at least I thought we did." She paused, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her cup. Dr. Brooks reached across the table, placing a comforting hand over hers. He was a kind man, but over time, things change, she continued, her voice growing softer. Our dreams took different paths, and he couldn't handle the responsibilities that came with raising a family. He left when Liam was just 2, and I decided to raise him on my own. Liam's heart ached hearing the pain in his mother's voice, but he knew this story was important, a piece of their past that they rarely spoke of. I focused on my work, on giving Liam the best life I could, but it wasn't easy. People can be unkind, quick to make judgments, she said, glancing at Dr. Brooks and James. There were many times we were treated like we didn't belong, even though we were trying as hard as anyone else. I wanted to shield Liam from that, to teach him that kindness is the only way to rise above it. Dr. Brooks nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. You've done an extraordinary job, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Liam has a strength and kindness that I've rarely seen. That comes from you. Liam's mother offered a small, grateful smile. We moved here to start fresh, to build a life where we could belong. But even here, we face challenges. People, they can be so quick to judge, she said, casting a meaningful glance at James. James, who had been listening intently, shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a look of guilt crossing his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but his mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, nodding for him to wait. Liam, sensing the weight of the moment, turned to James, his expression open and understanding. It's okay, he said softly, surprising even himself with the steadiness in his voice. I understand. It's hard to see people for who they are sometimes, especially when the world teaches us to look for differences. James's face softened as he looked at Liam, a mixture of regret and admiration in his eyes. Liam, he began, his voice filled with sincerity, I judged you and your mother unfairly. I'm ashamed of it, but I can't change the past. What I can do, though, is learn from it. Liam's mother nodded, her expression one of quiet acceptance. Thank you for your honesty, James. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong, and I believe that change is possible if we're willing to look at ourselves honestly. Dr. Brooks looked around the table, her heart swelling with pride at the bonds that had formed among them. This is what family is, she said softly. It's about growing together, facing our flaws, and choosing to be better. Liam, you and your mother have shown us what it means to love without conditions. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the backyard, they sat together in a comfortable silence, letting the words settle. The past was still there, etched in their memories, but it no longer held the same power. They had each taken a step toward understanding, toward forgiveness, and toward healing. That evening, as Liam and his mother prepared to leave, James stopped them at the door, his expression serious but hopeful. There's something I'd like to show you both, if you're willing, he said, his voice soft. Curious, they nodded, and James led them down the hall to his study. On one wall, framed photos hung in neat rows, capturing memories from different stages of his life. He pointed to a picture of a young woman, her eyes bright with kindness. This was my wife, Rachel, he said, his voice filled with tenderness. She passed away when Emma was born. It was a hard time for me. I felt lost, angry at the world for taking her from me. I realize now that some of that anger, I misdirected it, even toward you, Liam. Liam and his mother listened in silence, their hearts aching for James. He took a deep breath, turning to face them. Meeting you, watching how you live with such resilience and grace, it's made me realize how much I've been holding on to that anger. I see now that it was wrong to let it cloud my view of others, he admitted. Rachel would have wanted me to be better, to show kindness instead of judgment. You've helped me see that. Liam's mother placed a comforting hand on James's shoulder, her expression filled with empathy. Grief can make us forget who we are, she said softly. But love has a way of bringing us back. I believe Rachel would be proud of you for recognizing that. James nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. He looked at Liam, his voice filled with sincerity. Thank you, Liam. for reminding me of the kind of person I want to be." Liam smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him. "We all have things to learn," he said gently. "I'm just glad I could help." As they left James's study, a feeling of peace settled over all of them, a quiet understanding that transcended words. They had each faced their past, their pain, and their mistakes. And in doing so, they had forged a bond that was deeper than any they had known. In the weeks that followed, their lives continued to intertwine, becoming a shared journey of growth and support. James often invited Liam to spend time with him, teaching him things he had learned from his own father, how to fix things around the house, how to garden, and even how to play chess. Liam looked up to James, appreciating the quiet strength he saw in him, and he treasured the new bond they were forming. Dr. Brooks, meanwhile, became a constant presence in Liam's life. She would visit their apartment, bringing small gifts or homemade meals, and she often offered to help with household tasks, eager to give back in whatever way she could. Liam's mother was touched by her kindness, and she, too, found solace in their growing friendship. One evening, as they gathered around Dr. Brooks' dining table, Liam noticed a sense of ease that hadn't been there before. They shared laughter and stories, each of them fully present, unburdened by the past. The conversation was light, filled with small jokes and warm smiles, and Liam felt a sense of happiness he had rarely known. After dinner, Dr. Brooks cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I have something special planned," she announced, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "I thought it might be nice to plant a tree in the backyard, a symbol of new beginnings, of the life we're building together." Everyone agreed enthusiastically, and the following weekend, they gathered in Dr. Brooks' backyard to plant a young oak tree. Together, they dug the hole, carefully placed the sapling, and packed the soil around its base. As they worked, they shared hopes for the future, dreams they held close to their hearts. When the tree was finally planted, Dr. Brooks placed a small plaque at its base, engraved with the words "Rooted in Kindness." They stood back, admiring their work, the tree standing tall and proud against the backdrop of the autumn sky. Liam's mother wrapped an arm around her son, her heart swelling with pride. "We've come so far," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "This is where we belong." Liam nodded, his eyes fixed on the tree, feeling a sense of hope that was as strong and steady as the roots they had planted. He looked around at the people who would become his family, the people who had welcomed him and his mother with open hearts, and he knew that their future was bright. They had faced their past, they had built bridges, and they had planted seeds of kindness that would grow for years to come. And as they stood together, their hands intertwined, they knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey, a journey that would be filled with love, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of family, a legacy of love and resilience. As the days turned into weeks in autumn, deepened into the crisp chill of early winter, the oak tree in Dr. Brooks' backyard stood as a constant reminder of the journey that had brought their families together. It wasn't just a tree, but a symbol of resilience, growth, and the powerful impact of compassion. Liam, his mother, Dr. Brooks, and James had all forged connections that ran as deep as the tree's growing roots, each of them changed in some way by the experiences they had shared. Liam found himself growing closer to James, who took on an unofficial role as a mentor, offering advice and companionship that Liam hadn't realized he'd been missing. Every Saturday, they would meet in Dr. Brooks' backyard to work on small projects around the house or garden. As they trimmed hedges, fixed fences, or built birdhouses, James would share stories about his own childhood, his late wife Rachel, and his dreams for Emma's future. One cold Saturday afternoon, as they worked together to repair a loose fence post, James paused, his gaze softening as he looked at Liam. "You know, Liam," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "I wish I had your wisdom when I was your age. I've seen how you handle people, with kindness, even when they don't deserve it. That's not easy." Liam shrugged, his cheeks flushing slightly. I try to see the good in people. My mom always says that sometimes the people who seem the hardest to reach are the ones who need kindness the most. James nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Your mother's a wise woman. She's raised you well. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, their breaths visible in the cold air. Liam sensed that James was struggling to say something, and he waited patiently, his hand steady as he held the fence post in place. Finally, James took a deep breath, his voice quiet but resolute. Liam, I've been thinking about Rachel a lot lately, he said, his gaze distant. Losing her, it made me close off parts of myself. I pushed people away because it was easier than facing the pain. But you and your mother, you've shown me that healing is possible, that I can open my heart again. Liam looked up, his heart aching with empathy. Rachel would want you to be happy, he said gently. I think she'd be proud of you. James's face softened, a tear slipping down his cheek as he reached out to place a hand on Liam's shoulder. Thank you, Liam. You've given me hope. You and your mother have changed my life in ways I can't even explain. They finished their work in silence, the unspoken words of gratitude and understanding hanging in the air between them like a shared secret. As they packed up their tools and made their way back to the house, Liam felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet certainty that he and James would always share a bond forged in resilience and healing. Meanwhile, Liam's mother had formed a deep friendship with Dr. Brooks, who had become a source of support and comfort in her life. They often spent their evenings together, sharing coffee and stories, laughing over old memories, and finding solace in each other's company. Dr. Brooks had grown to admire Liam's mother immensely, not only for her resilience, but for her unwavering kindness and strength. One evening, as they sat together in Dr. Brooks' cozy living room, a fire crackling in the hearth, Dr. Brooks looked at Liam's mother with a thoughtful expression. You know, she began, her voice soft, you've done such an incredible job raising Liam. I see so much of your strength and compassion in him. Liam's mother smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, Margaret. I've tried to teach him to see the world with love, even when it's difficult. I wanted him to know that we're all connected, that kindness is something we give freely, not because it's deserved, but because it's needed. Dr. Brooks nodded, her gaze warm. You've given him a gift that will last a lifetime. He's changed my life too, in ways I never expected. He's reminded me of the importance of family, of being present, of opening my heart. There was a pause, a comfortable silence as they sipped their coffee, the firelight casting a warm glow across their faces. After a moment, Dr. Brooks leaned forward, her expression growing serious. There's something I've been meaning to discuss with you, she said, her voice tentative. I know you're working hard to provide for Liam, and I admire your strength, but I was wondering if you'd ever considered going back to school. Liam's mother's eyes widened, surprise evident on her face. Back to school, she repeated, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. I haven't really thought about it. With my job, with everything. Dr. Brooks placed a comforting hand on her arm, her gaze steady. You're an incredible nurse, but I see so much potential in you. You could do so much more. Become a lead nurse, even a nurse practitioner. I know it would be a challenge, but I believe you could do it. Liam's mother looked down at her hands, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. She had always dreamed of advancing her career, of creating a better life for herself and Liam, but the obstacles had always seemed too great. She thought of the long shifts, the financial strain, the countless nights spent worrying about how to make ends meet. Dr. Brooks seemed to sense her hesitation and squeezed her hand gently. I'm here to help. We're family now, and I want to support you in any way I can. I know you're more than capable, and I'd be honored to help you achieve your dreams. Liam's mother looked up, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. She had always been the one to carry the weight, to be strong for her son, but in this moment, she felt the warmth of Dr. Brooks' friendship and support like a lifeline. "Thank you, Margaret," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I don't know what to say." Dr. Brooks smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Just say you'll think about it. You deserve to pursue your dreams, just as much as anyone else." They shared a quiet smile, the fire crackling in the background, and Liam's mother felt a sense of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She had been given an opportunity, a chance to grow, and she knew that with Dr. Brooks' support, anything was possible. The months passed, filled with small moments of growth, healing, and the quiet joy of shared experiences. Liam excelled in school, his confidence blossoming as he thrived in the supportive environment Dr. Brooks and her family had created. His mother, inspired by Dr. Brooks' encouragement, enrolled in night classes to further her nursing education, and Liam was endlessly proud of her determination. Dr. Brooks continued to be a guiding force in their lives, offering support, love, and wisdom whenever it was needed. She had become a second mother to Liam, a friend and confidant to his mother, and the bond they shared grew stronger with each passing day. One bright spring morning, as the first blossoms appeared on the oak tree they had planted together, Dr. Brooks invited everyone over for a special celebration. The backyard was decorated with flowers, lights, and colorful banners, the air filled with the scent of blooming roses and freshly cut grass. Friends and neighbors gathered, their faces alight with smiles and laughter, and Liam felt a thrill of excitement as he looked around at the people who would become his family. Dr. Brooks stood up, a small envelope in her hands, her eyes sparkling with pride as she addressed the gathering. "Today, we're here to celebrate the incredible journey we've all shared," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "Liam and his mother have become a part of our lives in ways I never could have imagined. They have shown us all the power of love, resilience, and kindness." She turned to Liam, her gaze warm and filled with admiration. "Liam, you've taught us all what it means to be brave, to act with compassion, even in the face of adversity. You have inspired us all, and I am endlessly grateful to have you in my life." Liam's cheeks flushed with pride, a soft smile spreading across his face as he looked up at Dr. Brooks. She handed him the envelope, her hands trembling slightly as she smiled down at him. "This is a small gift from all of us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "A way to say thank you for everything you've done, for bringing us all together." Liam opened the envelope, his heart racing as he read the words on the certificate inside. "Scholarship for Future Leaders in Compassionate Care." It was a scholarship fund that Dr. Brooks and the community had created, one that would ensure Liam had the resources he needed to pursue his dreams, to make a difference in the world. Overwhelmed, Liam looked up, his eyes filled with tears as he met Dr. Brooks' gaze. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I don't know what to say." Dr. Brooks hugged him tightly, her voice filled with warmth as she replied, "You don't have to say anything, Liam. Just keep being the incredible person you are." As the celebration continued, Liam's mother watched her son with a heart full of pride, her dreams for him expanding as she imagined the future he would have, a future built on love, compassion, and the unwavering support of a community that had become his family. And as Liam stood beneath the oak tree, surrounded by the people he loved, he knew that he was part of something greater, a legacy of resilience, kindness, and love. The tree would grow with him, its branches stretching toward the sky, a testament to the journey that had brought them all together. In that moment, Liam understood that he wasn't just a boy who had saved a life in a park one autumn day. He was part of a legacy, a future filled with possibilities, a life rich with meaning. He had found his family, his purpose, and his place in the world, a world that he knew he would change, one small act of kindness at a time. Spreading roots, embracing purpose. Spring transitioned to summer, and as the leaves filled the oak tree's branches with vibrant green, Liam's life continued to blossom. With each passing day, his family's roots grew deeper in the community. Neighbors who once barely acknowledged them now greeted Liam and his mother warmly, sometimes even stopping by to chat or share a meal. The quiet strength that had sustained Liam and his mother through years of struggle had transformed into something visible, something that inspired those around them. Liam's mother excelled in her night classes, her renewed sense of purpose and excitement about her future apparent in every conversation she had. Dr. Brooks supported her every step of the way, helping with Emma whenever James needed extra hands and tutoring Liam's mother when her coursework became challenging. For Liam, it was heartwarming to watch his mother finally receive the recognition and encouragement she had always deserved. One afternoon, Dr. Brooks invited Liam and his mother over for a barbecue. She had planned a small gathering of neighbors and friends, a celebration of both Liam's academic achievements and his mother's advancement in her nursing program. The yard was filled with the sound of laughter, the smell of grilled food, and the sense of warmth and community that had become a fixture in their lives. James was at the grill, expertly flipping burgers and hot dogs, while Emma played with Liam near the oak tree, her giggles filling the air. Liam noticed how James had changed over the months. He was more open, more patient, and his once guarded expressions had softened. There was a sense of healing in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a quiet gratitude that he expressed often with a pat on the back, a kind word, or a gentle nudge of encouragement. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the backyard, Dr. Brooks gathered everyone together, her voice carrying over the cheerful hum of conversation. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her tone filled with emotion. "Today, we're not just celebrating Liam's achievements or his mother's success. We're celebrating the strength of this community, the way we've come together to support each other, to create a family that's bound not by blood, but by love and understanding." She turned to Liam, her gaze warm and filled with pride. "Liam, you have a gift for kindness, for seeing people for who they truly are. You've taught us all so much about resilience and compassion, and I have no doubt that you're going to continue inspiring those around you." Liam's mother placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes shining with pride. "It's because of all of you," she said, addressing the group. "You've shown us that there are people who believe in us, who see us for who we are. We're so grateful for everything you've given us." As the crowd applauded, Liam felt a swell of pride, a warmth that seemed to spread from his chest out to his fingertips. This wasn't just a celebration. It was a recognition of the journey they had all taken together, the struggles they had overcome, and the bond they had built. After the applause faded, Dr. Brooks held up a small envelope. "I have one more surprise," she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. She handed the envelope to Liam's mother, who opened it slowly, her brow furrowing in confusion before her eyes widened in astonishment. It's a grant," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "A grant to cover my remaining tuition and provide financial support while I finish school." Dr. Brooks smiled, her eyes misting over. "We wanted to make sure you have everything you need to achieve your dreams. This grant was made possible by contributions from everyone here. We believe in you, and we want to see you succeed." Liam's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears as she looked around at the faces of her neighbors, friends, and family. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how to repay all of you. I'll never forget this kindness." As she hugged Dr. Brooks, James, and each person who had supported them, Liam felt a profound sense of gratitude. He realized that this moment, this community, was the life his mother had always dreamed of, a life filled with love, support, and acceptance. They were no longer alone. They were part of something larger, something that would sustain them for years to come. A few weeks later, Liam found himself walking through Henderson Park on his way home from school. It was the same path he had taken that fateful day when he found Emma alone, but now it felt different. The park was alive with the laughter of children, the chatter of families, and the smell of blooming flowers. Liam noticed how everything seemed brighter, filled with a new energy, a new life. As he strolled along, he heard a faint cry, similar to the one that had captured his attention months ago. His heart quickened, but as he looked around, he saw a mother with a baby stroller nearby. comforting her child. She looked up, catching Liam's gaze, and offered him a warm smile. "Thank you for stopping," she said, sensing his concern. "My little one just needed some attention." Liam returned her smile, a sense of peace settling over him. "I understand," he replied softly, his voice filled with empathy. As he continued his walk, he thought about how much had changed since that day, how that single act of kindness had set off a series of events that had transformed his life. When he arrived home, his mother greeted him with a hug, her face glowing with pride. "Guess what?" she said, her eyes dancing with excitement. "I finished my final exams today, and I passed with flying colors. I'm officially a registered nurse." Liam's face lit up with joy, and he wrapped his arms around her in a tight hug. "Mom, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." They celebrated with a homemade dinner, laughing and reminiscing about the journey that had brought them to this moment. They had both grown, both changed in ways that went beyond words. As they sat together at the table, Liam felt a sense of contentment, a quiet assurance that they were on the right path. A few days later, Dr. Brooks invited them to attend a special event at the hospital. She explained that the hospital wanted to honor Liam's mother for her dedication and resilience, as well as recognize Liam's act of heroism that had brought Emma safely into her arms. The event was a formal affair, with doctors, nurses, and community members gathered in the grand hall. Liam felt a thrill of nervous excitement as they entered the hall, his mother looking radiant in a simple but elegant dress. Dr. Brooks greeted them at the entrance, her face beaming with pride. As they made their way to the front of the room, the hospital director took the stage, his voice filled with warmth as he spoke. "Tonight, we are here to honor two remarkable individuals who have shown us the power of compassion, resilience, and courage. In a world that can sometimes feel divided, they have reminded us of our shared humanity." He turned to Liam's mother, a proud smile on his face. "First, I would like to recognize a woman who has worked tirelessly to provide for her son and to build a better life. She has shown us what it means to be a caregiver, not only to her family but to her community. Please join me in honoring her for her dedication and her incredible journey to becoming a registered nurse." The audience erupted in applause as Liam's mother stepped forward, her eyes shining with emotion as she accepted a plaque engraved with her name. Liam clapped enthusiastically, his heart swelling with pride as he watched his mother finally receive the recognition she had worked so hard for. The director continued, turning his gaze to Liam. "And now, I would like to honor a young man whose act of bravery touched the hearts of all who heard his story. By choosing to help a stranger, he set off a chain of events that brought healing, hope, and unity to this community. Liam, you are an inspiration to us all." Liam stepped forward, his cheeks flushed as he accepted a small medal, his hands trembling slightly as he took in the warm applause from the crowd. Dr. Brooks stood nearby, her face glowing with pride as she watched him, her eyes filled with tears of joy. As the ceremony concluded, Liam and his mother shared a quiet moment together, taking in the magnitude of what they had achieved. They had faced countless challenges, but they had emerged stronger, bound by the love and resilience that had carried them through. Over the summer, Liam spent more time volunteering at the hospital, inspired by his mother's work and Dr. Brooks' influence. He helped with small tasks, organizing supplies, delivering meals, and even reading stories to children in the pediatric ward. Each day, he saw the difference that kindness could make, the way a simple act of compassion could bring light to someone's life. One afternoon, as he sat by a young boy's bedside, reading a story aloud, he realized that he had found his calling. He wanted to help people, to be there for them in their moments of need, just as his mother had always been there for him. When he shared this dream with Dr. Brooks and his mother, they both beamed with pride. "You're going to do great things, Liam," Dr. Brooks said, her voice filled with certainty. "You have a heart for helping others, and that's something the world needs more of." Liam's mother nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Whatever you choose to do, I'll be right there, supporting you every step of the way." And so, as summer turned to fall, Liam set his sights on a future filled with possibility. He continued to nurture the roots he had planted, drawing strength from the family, friends, and community that had become his foundation. The oak tree in Dr. Brooks' backyard grew taller with each passing season, its branches reaching toward the sky, its roots spreading deep into the earth. It stood as a symbol of the legacy they had built together, a legacy of love, resilience, and kindness that would endure for generations to come. Liam knew that no matter where life took him, he would carry this legacy forward, spreading kindness in a world that so often needed it. He had learned that every act of compassion, every choice to help others, was like planting a seed that would grow, bloom, and bear fruit, creating a world that was a little brighter, a little better, because he had chosen to care. New horizons, a lasting legacy. As the crisp autumn days turned colder, Liam found himself reflecting more deeply on the journey that had brought him and his mother to this new chapter in their lives. The oak tree in Dr. Brooks' backyard had grown robust and sturdy, its roots mirroring the strength and resilience that Liam's family had built within themselves and the community. The tree stood as a constant reminder of the past, both the struggles they had endured and the beautiful connections they had forged along the way. It was on a particularly cold morning, as the first hint of winter frosted the grass, that Dr. Brooks invited Liam and his mother over for breakfast. They found her kitchen alive with the scent of warm muffins, the hiss of freshly brewed coffee, and the cozy crackle of a fire she had lit to ward off the morning chill. Dr. Brooks greeted them with a warm hug, her eyes filled with a sense of excitement that she didn't try to hide. "I have some news," she said, gesturing for them to sit at the table, where an assortment of muffins, fruit, and pastries awaited them. Liam and his mother exchanged curious glances before taking their seats, their anticipation growing. Dr. Brooks took a deep breath, her gaze settling on them with a mixture of pride and affection. "Over the past few months, you two have become more than just friends to me. You've become my family," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "I know I shared a lot about my past, about Rachel, about losing my husband. But what I haven't shared is how much this journey with you has changed me. It's inspired me to do something new, something that I hope will continue our legacy of kindness and compassion." Liam's mother leaned forward, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Margaret, what do you mean?" Dr. Brooks reached across the table, taking their hands in hers. "I've decided to establish a foundation," she announced, her voice filled with quiet determination. "It will be called the Roots of Compassion Foundation, and it will be dedicated to helping families like yours. Families who have faced hardship but are determined to build a better future. It will provide scholarships, mentorship, and financial support to single parents, young caregivers, and children who dream of making a difference in their communities." Liam felt his heart swell with pride and gratitude as he took in her words. He glanced at his mother, whose eyes brimmed with tears. "Margaret, that's incredible," his mother whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I can't think of a better way to honor everything we've been through." Dr. Brooks smiled, her own eyes misting over. "I wanted to create something lasting, something that would continue the legacy we've all built together. I want this foundation to be a beacon of hope, to show people that no matter where they come from or what they've been through, they can still achieve their dreams." Liam's mother squeezed Dr. Brooks' hand, her gratitude evident in every line of her face. "You're giving so many people a chance they might never have had otherwise. That's a gift beyond words." Dr. Brooks looked at Liam, her eyes filled with warmth. "And I have one more announcement, Liam," she said, her voice gentle. "I would be honored if you would help me lead this foundation as it grows. I can think of no one better suited to inspire others, to show them what it means to act with courage and compassion." Liam's eyes widened in surprise, a wave of excitement mingling with nervousness. "Me? But I'm just a kid," he stammered, his cheeks flushing. Dr. Brooks laughed, her voice filled with affection. "You are far more than just a kid, Liam. You're wise beyond your years, and you have a heart that sees people for who they are. You don't need experience to inspire others. You just need to be yourself." Liam felt a surge of pride and purpose as he absorbed her words. He had often thought about his future, about how he could continue helping others. But this opportunity felt like the culmination of everything he and his mother had worked toward. It was a chance to give back, to honor the kindness and resilience that had brought them here. "I'd be honored, Dr. Brooks," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you for believing in me." Dr. Brooks reached out, pulling him into a warm hug. "Thank you for being exactly who you are, Liam," she whispered. "You've changed my life, and I know you'll change many more." Over the next few months, Liam, his mother, and Dr. Brooks threw themselves into building the foundation. They held meetings in Dr. Brooks' cozy living room, sketching out ideas, discussing funding, and reaching out to community leaders who wanted to support their cause. The Roots of Compassion Foundation quickly gained attention, drawing the interest of people across the city who were inspired by the story of how it had come to be. James played a pivotal role, using his connections to gather resources and arrange meetings with potential donors. His quiet dedication to the foundation spoke volumes, and as Liam watched him work, he saw a new light in James, a sense of purpose that seemed to heal old wounds, a commitment that transcended the mistakes of the past. One evening, as they prepared for the foundation's official launch event, James pulled Liam aside, his expression thoughtful. "You know, Liam," he began, his voice steady, "I never told you how much this journey has changed me. You taught me to open my heart again, to see people for who they are. And for that, I'll always be grateful." Liam smiled, his gaze steady as he looked up at James. "You've taught me a lot too," he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "You showed me that people can change, that it's never too late to start over. I'll always be grateful for that." James nodded, his eyes misting over as he patted Liam's shoulder. "We're family now, Liam. And no matter what, we'll always have each other." The day of the foundation's launch event arrived, and the city's community center was transformed into a vibrant celebration of hope and resilience. A banner bearing the foundation's name hung proudly over the stage, and tables were set with flowers and candles, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Friends, neighbors, and community leaders filled the room, their faces alight with excitement as they mingled and shared stories of how kindness and compassion had touched their lives. Liam stood at the front of the room with Dr. Brooks, James, and his mother, his heart pounding with a mixture of pride and nervousness. Dr. Brooks stepped forward, her voice strong as she addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her tone filled with emotion. "The Roots of Compassion Foundation is not just an organization. It's a testament to the power of love, resilience, and community. It was inspired by the journey of a young boy named Liam, whose act of kindness brought us all together." She gestured to Liam, who stepped forward, his cheeks flushed as he looked out at the audience. "When I found Emma that day in the park, I didn't know what would happen," he said, his voice steady. "I just knew I couldn't leave her alone. That decision changed my life in ways I never expected, and it taught me that one small act of kindness can make a world of difference." The audience erupted in applause, their faces filled with admiration and respect. Liam's mother stepped forward, her eyes shining with pride. "I've always told Liam that kindness is the most powerful thing we can give to others," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "Today, I see the truth of that in each of you, in this foundation, and in the legacy we're building together." As the evening continued, Liam mingled with the guests, sharing stories and listening to others who had been inspired by his journey. He met single mothers who had overcome incredible odds, young people who dreamed of giving back, and community leaders who were committed to making a difference. Each story filled him with a sense of purpose, a quiet certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Toward the end of the event, James approached him, a proud smile on his face. "You did well tonight, Liam," he said, his voice filled with warmth. You've inspired a lot of people." Liam grinned, his heart full. "Thank you, James. I couldn't have done it without all of you." James nodded, his gaze filled with pride. "This foundation is going to change lives, Liam, and it's just the beginning." As the foundation took root in the community, its impact began to ripple outward, touching lives in ways Liam could never have imagined. Single parents found support, young caregivers received scholarships, and families who had once struggled now had a network of people who believed in them. Liam watched the foundation grow, his heart swelling with pride each time he saw someone find hope, each time he heard a story of resilience. He knew that this was the legacy he had always wanted to leave, a legacy of love, compassion, and unwavering support. The years passed, and as Liam grew into a young man, he continued to dedicate himself to the foundation, expanding its reach and deepening its impact. He went on to study social work, inspired by the journey that had brought him and his mother to this place of purpose and belonging. And as he worked, he carried the lessons of his past with him, the wisdom his mother had instilled in him, and the support of the community that had become his family. Dr. Brooks remained a guiding force in his life, her love and wisdom a constant source of strength. Together, they watched the foundation grow, its branches reaching ever outward, its roots anchored firmly in the values they had built together. One day, as Liam stood beneath the oak tree in Dr. Brooks' backyard, he felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet joy that filled him from within. The tree had grown tall and strong, its branches stretching toward the sky, its leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. It was a testament to everything they had built, a living symbol of the love and resilience that had brought them all together. As he placed a hand on the tree's trunk, he thought of the future, of the lives the foundation would touch, the families it would support, the legacy it would leave behind. He knew that, in every act of kindness, in every choice to help others, the foundation's roots would continue to grow, spreading love and hope to all who needed it. And as he stood there, beneath the tree that had witnessed their journey, Liam made a promise to himself, a promise to carry forward the legacy of love and compassion that had shaped his life, to nurture it, and to let it bloom in the hearts of everyone it touched. The future stretched out before him, filled with endless possibilities, and he knew that, with his family and his community by his side, he would carry their shared legacy forward for generations to come.